Hey everyone, we're having just a few technical difficulties. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset up and we're going to come right back on using Zoom. You definitely do not want to miss this interview. We have an amazing guest on, Matt Cascio. He is a cannabis nurse, Cannabis Matt, and he actually, we're going to be talking about all of the compelling things he's done, what led him to become a cannabis nurse, and what he's doing now, which is, oh my God, and there he is. Oh my God, you're here.
Hey, I figured it out.
Oh my, okay, wait, let me hang up.
Wow.
Oh, shoot.
Thank God for technology. It's so grand.
I gotta turn this phone off. Oh my goodness. Here we are. Oh my God, I thought we were gonna have to start over. All right, this is awesome. Okay, so
Smiling upon us. So
no kidding. And I go, oh God, I don't have my sheets, but that's okay. I took the score. I took the test. Okay, let's start from scratch. Okay, we're gonna pretend that we're starting all over. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Hey everybody, it's Sherry Tuckus, the Green Nurse, and welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We often talk about things that people don't like to talk about because they're often important subjects and topics that we need to discuss to help decrease stigma around these issues for healing. So today I would like to introduce you to Matt Cascio. He's a registered nurse, to the Green Nurse platform, where he is going to share his compelling story of becoming a cannabis nurse and what he is doing in the industry today and the programs he has developed to help patients and providers to live their best lives. I'm not done. We're going to keep going on. There's a lot here. So Matt actually is going to share the story. He changed careers and became a nurse at the age of 38 years old. He was working in the music industry and corporate world for over 22 years. He's worked as a nurse in various areas, including the operating room, case management, critical care, and he recently just left the oncology field. Matt is also a certified compassion fatigue professional, a life coach, and is still involved with music and plays guitar in a local Kansas City band. Matt is also a member of the American Cannabis Nurses Association, the Cannabis Nurses Network, and is a cannabis certified by the Medical Cannabis Institute. He's been an educational speaker at the Truman Medical Center, as well as several cannabis events in Missouri. Matt also has a Facebook page, which we're going to tag, Matt the Cannabis Nurse, where he educates people via social media. He is currently working as part of the Cannabis Care Team, a nurse-owned company that is providing cannabis education in dispensaries in both Oklahoma and Missouri. Matt's vision is to create an individualized patient treatment plans to set them up for long-term success with their cannabinoid therapy. So Matt and I had a little session beforehand, which we're going to show after. And we had a long discussion of what compassion fatigue, burnout, and all the issues surrounding that. No one really likes to talk about healthcare, servicemen, trauma, right? However, what we're seeing today in the pandemic, not only with providers, patients, medical professionals, but those other servicemen, the police, the fire department, first responders, all the trauma that people are experiencing. So following the show, like I said, we're going to be broadcasting what it looks like, and we're going to share stories of what Matt and I have both experienced in the field when it comes to having traumatic experiences, and experiencing the actual compassion fatigue. So Matt, that was a very long-winded introduction, but I started off a little poor, starting off saying there's going to be technical difficulties, and we manifested it. We made it happen. So welcome to the Green Nurse.
That was awesome. I was glad. I was glad that came together for us. So yeah, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here, to be able to share some time with you and talk about some stuff that I have a lot of passion for.
Yeah, Matt, what I really love about your story is, oftentimes, right, nurses are leaving the field to do something else. You were 38 years old, you were in the music industry, and you were in corporate America, and you changed professions right over to nursing. So what was that like? What was that all about?
Well, it was very difficult because I had come back from Los Angeles. My mother, unfortunately, was sick with cancer, and I wasn't really doing much out in LA. that really was more important than her. So I came home and started doing some other things with my life and wound up becoming an RN. I knew I loved people and I loved helping people. And that was kind of what led me into there. My music, I love playing music because I like watching people enjoy it, because music is such a healing thing. And nursing is a way to me continue on as a healer too. So it just
Yes.
made sense.
Yes, it totally makes sense. So, how did you start your cannabis? How did you get into cannabis nursing? How
Well,
did you transition from, you think you went from music, the corporate world,
well,
to
obviously,
nursing, then to cannabis nursing?
here I am, I just, turned 60 not long ago. And so I mean, my music, I got to do a lot of cool things, playing in a hair band in the 80s, living out in Los Angeles, doing a lot of stuff. As I was growing up, I was very cannabis friendly. I had an uncle that kind of was involved with cannabis, that I thought he was the coolest thing, that was as sliced bread. And just like every Halloween, I always dressed up as a hippie. That was just me. I don't know if it was me. And I always wanted to be a musician, but I learned in my 20s that alcohol just wasn't for me.
Mm,
I don't ever really drink, and I never really have been into it. And cannabis was something that I used when I was younger, that I just thought it was, you're in a band. It was something I wasn't thinking about it medicinally. It was like, it was just something I did.
it helped to enhance your experience as a
Sure, and
musician,
it was just part of the whole experience of
right?
almost being some sort of modern day troubadour that I was back then. But as I got older, I mean, I realized that I was using cannabis medicinally, and that it became, I wanted to understand it more. And when my mom was really sick, I really wanted to understand it more. And I got really started reading of the godfather of cannabis, Dr. Mesho,
Mm,
and started really studying the Israelis, and was just really amazed at stuff. And nobody knew really a lot about education and things like that back in the day, but it was amazing to see that there was there's almost factual evidence, what cannabis could possibly do or be used for. But obviously we know how the stigma that we have in the United States, especially with this class 1 schedule and not being able to do really research. So, and that was back in the 90s, and there wasn't as much. So but for me to be becoming a cannabis nurse, I in 2014 I was working with some friends in isogenics, and I just had somebody call me up and said, "Hey man, how'd you like to work with the founders of this company? They're called Canaway, and all their products have CBD in them." And I was like, "Wow!"
ooh,
I started working with them, and that's where my journey of cannabis. Not, I mean, I always thought cannabis was weed, but it's just cannabis is
a plant, lots of different
yeah.
types of plants.
For me, cannabis is just a genus name for hemp
Yeah.
and marijuana. So I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just thinking about marijuana as a young lad and not really being educated on it. But that's when I started really diving into education, and I just really just I got a hold of everything I could and just started reading and learning and learning. And then I went through my compassion fatigue thing. And as I walked away, I was sitting at home one day with my brother Michael, and we were like, "Dude, we need to make some CBD infused olive oil."
There you
He
go.
was like, "Well, does any of the stores around Kansas City sell it?" And I go, "I don't know, man. Let's get on Facebook." And I got on Facebook. I typed in CBD stores, and this store called Hemp Life came up. And right when it came up, it said, "Are you looking for a job?"
Whoa.
It was like the universe was like, and I went down there and they hired me on the spot.
No, that's an awesome story.
It was like, yeah. So I had from 2018 to just COVID, when we kind of got shut down, and we're not really essential, and I'm kind of doing some other things too. But what an opportunity to be able to, stand in a store and educate customers all day long about cannabis. But I didn't know what I was going to do as a cannabis nurse. But I can assure you, and you'll vouch for this too, if you want to become relevant and learn some things, join the American Cannabis Nurses Association and the Cannabis Nurses Network. and become a part
Yes.
of that. It's
Yeah.
a huge, huge family that can really, really be beneficial to you. I
Yes. And both organizations offer something different and they complement one another
definitely,
perfectly.
definitely.
You know?
It's
Yeah.
really something that can help you. I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, here I was a nurse, so that's why I got that certification with the Medical Cannabis Institute, because it wasn't that I didn't. It was funny when I took the course. I took the test and it took me like 15 minutes, like to take. But it made me feel good that I had studied and
Yeah.
I knew so much about the endocannabinoid system and all these different things. So, and as we know, it's just a constant journey. You never know anything, and every day
Oh,
there's something new coming out, more research and things like that.
yes, Matt, this is what I always say. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah,
I mean, once you go down the rabbit hole, too, the other thing I really love about cannabis is once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. Once you learn the miracle of this plant, you can't go back and say, that's not true. Once you go down that rabbit hole, you just keep going down, and it just keeps peeling back the layers of what this plant and other plant medicines can do for people, to help them to reach new levels of wellness.
exactly.
Um, so Matt, just because I always like to, I bring it back to cannabis. We want to get to compassion fatigue because I took the test, but basically, how is cannabis helping you as a patient, and how is it? How do you use it?
So basically, um, my story is, everybody's got a family gene pool that they're running from, trying to just stay a couple steps ahead of that sucker. And my family, my mom and my grandmother had really, really bad depression, and
Mm,
so that was me. And in my 30s is when my early 30s, I started on antidepressants, and it just kept going from one to another, and this dose and that dose, and I've been on him so long, and I started reading about CBD because, in all honesty, THC is not really that great for depression. Um,
no.
if you're going to take a micro dose of some cannabis to maybe help out with the anxiety that you're experiencing with um, the depression, some THC may be good, but CBD actually works with our 5-HT1 serotonin receptors in our brain. So it's mimicking exactly what an antidepressant will do. So
Exactly.
I had tried to wean off antidepressants so many times, and I would get just hopeless. And I think I was doing it too quickly. I was
Hmm.
cutting doses down because, as I didn't really know, but I mean, when you're on an antidepressant for so long, it starts changing the chemistry of your brain almost. And when you're trying to come off of it, it's horrible. So
I know.
I
It's
just
so
started.
bad. I mean, it's debilitating. Like, just like the whole coming off the medications and then trying to mitigate side effects.
Sure.
Like, do you go back on? Do you not go back on? How do I work through this? How long can I take this horrible feeling of withdrawal? And then adjusting the cannabis. It's a mind.
So
You
for
know.
me, it just got to be where I started weaning myself off of an antidepressant and just consistently taking CBD every day. I would take it twice a day. And I'll admit I take CBD more than twice a day, but it had to be at least twice.
Leave. Yeah.
Because when I talk to people, it's like, why would you like be on like these medications and want to get off of them and think that you could only just use cannabis maybe once a day or something? I mean, if you take Percocet 4 times a day for your chronic pain, you better
Yep.
start putting a really good cannabis care plan together of where you're going to be medicating at least 4 to 6 times a day to keep that consistency to help manage that pain throughout the day.
It's kind of like glycemic index, right? So if you just eat one meal a day, you're going to have the sugar highs and lows. So,
Sure.
having that steady cannabinoid level throughout the day. And plus, if you think about the endocannabinoid system, we produce internal endogenous cannabinoids upon demand multiple times during the day. So
Sure.
why would you ever do it once? I do it like 6 or 7 times a day, but using various different things. You know
Sure.
what I mean? I'm not just smoking. I'm not just eating edibles. It's like a topical, a tincture, a
Yeah.
capsule, maybe a puff.
A CBD CBG mix. I mix in
Oh,
other cannabinoids throughout the day as well. I'm not just wanting to sit around and get trashed. Those days have come and gone. This is,
exactly.
you know,
And that's the part that's great too, is as we're learning and evolving and being our own best research subjects, is we're really able to teach patients how to craft their experience. Like,
sure.
what's important to you? How do you want to live your life? How do you want to experience this plant? So I can, knowing, and just, it's really teaching patients critical thinking skills about what are you doing in the day? What's going on? What is your, day like? And teaching people not to rely on a watch or a clock or a pill bottle, but to truly listen to their bodies when using this plant.
Yeah.
Matt, I wanted to just bring up the thing too. We get back to compassion fatigue and how, you dealt with depression and how compassion fatigue came up. So if you think about it, you also mentioned to me too, that you're extremely empathic, and clinicians that are extremely empathic, not only do you feel things in your present space, but you feel things, we're talking collectively.
Yeah.
So that's, you feel emotions of people in your community, so the more, when empaths are, television and the news, I can read something and I can immediately start to feel those feelings, and it can be very overwhelming. And so as empaths, I'm sure you know, Matt, that we take care of our bioenergetic fields by avoiding those things that are going to bring us to a place of hypervigilance, because then compassion fatigue,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, sure.
yes. So, Matt, let's talk a little bit more about the compassion fatigue, because we had a really amazing discussion. Your program, your class is really amazing. I took the score, the test, and you know what? I'm gonna grab it. It's right. It's really, really, really. It was really great because I scored a lot differently than I thought I was going to score. Hold
Interesting.
on.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
Talk
great.
about not being prepared. Anyways, okay. So this was interesting. So it was really, really cool. So with all these questions, there was 30 of them. It's called the Professional Quality of Life Scale, Compassion Satisfaction and Compassion Fatigue. So it was all these different questions, and you had to reply never, rarely, sometimes, often, very often. And they went down through a series of them. So I went through all of this, and then you have to add up the particular numbers. So I'll tell you what I had. It was really interesting. My compassion satisfaction score was 41. That was average. So it was actually average high.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty average score though. But I mean, what were you basing off of that? I mean, it's been
Can I tell you?
because it's been a while since. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since you've been involved in the hospital.
Yes, I
So
haven't been in. So I answer this based on what I'm doing right now in nursing.
awesome. Okay, awesome.
Okay. So, and when I was looking at the questions, I was like, okay, I had to really be cognizant. Am I answering this in the past or the present? I said, nope, so I wanted to see where I'm at right now. So I could kind of figure out, like, am I getting to burnout? You know what I mean? Want to
Well,
prevent that.
I think that's really good that you're at an average high, because it really shows that kind of like me, like we spoke about earlier on our other episode, is that we were able to really get away from this thing that had like stole part of our soul away and start doing the things that were, it's like that we're passionate about, and it's brought back that level of satisfaction in your life. That's important, man. Very important. That's awesome.
When you can figure out and discover, why you're here, your purpose is here, and you truly have the passion to do it, it is really, really, really transformational. Amazing. Yeah, and this is actually demonstrating it too, because I know for a fact how I would answer these questions in the past would have been very, very different. So the burnout scale was 24. What I found really fascinating was at the burnout scale, when you were looking at the questions, they had you to change the number, right? Which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you went back there to score that when you saw that, wow, some of these questions were related to this context of compassion satisfaction, and some are related to burnout and some to secondary trauma syndrome. You wouldn't think that as you were taking the test.
Exactly. So my score was 24, and average is between 23 and 41.
Yeah.
So I'm average,
So yeah.
which isn't bad. But
No,
it's making me aware, looking at the different questions too, as to where I need to take care of myself better.
sure, sure. And I mean, like we said earlier, I don't care what job you work at, even if it's your own company, you get burnt out on doing all the stuff that you have to do. It's just, it's part of work, I mean, but you have a little bit more control in your own situation, which is a good,
True. Truly good thing. Okay, let's talk about this.
yeah.
Secondary traumatic stress scale. So a lot of people don't know what that means. So I'll tell you what my score is, and then maybe you can explain what that means. So my score was 30, which is average, and average is between 23 and 41. So mine was a 30, and that's the secondary traumatic stress scale.
Sure.
So
And
what is so that means I was affected by trauma, right? Is that
yeah, and I hope not at the job that you're doing right now so much, but I think that it still makes you realize that even though you've healed a lot, there's a few things you need to learn to let go of still, as that probably trigger you when you talk about them, and you get emotional about your patients and stuff. And once again, healing is a marathon. It's not a race. It's
Mhm.
not all sunshine and lollipops.
It's ongoing. It's
So
ongoing.
yeah, yeah, as
So
we know. So yeah, I mean,
So this is actually, I'm not going to lie, this score was based on what's happening right now in my life, and I look at it. It's all the patients that are suffering, the people that
right.
are dying, the nurses that are stressed out and
Yeah.
scared and
So
fearful.
you answered that very more empathically as you were thinking, and it's true. I feel that. I mean, if I was looking at it from that point, I would have done the same thing, because I feel those people suffering, because I know what it's like to be in those hallways and in those rooms with those people, and I can't even imagine what it's like.
Me neither. I mean, working, in hospice, we talked about this earlier. The helping patients cross over from the physical to the spiritual is so rewarding. But the part that was hard was the suffering that the family experienced around their loved one dying.
Sure.
That to me was traumatic, not being able to console someone that is completely 100% devastated and they're processing this right in front of you and
Yeah.
feeling powerless to be able to help them, to comfort them, and not knowing what to say sometimes. It's really, we got to look at it, that piece. And then even now, so dealing with death and dying, and even dealing with people that are sick in the hospital is stressful enough. Now compound it with what's going on in the world today, with the pandemic and the equipment and the vaccines, and people not taking it seriously, and people thinking so everyone is being affected by trauma.
There's a 2017 study that was done by a gentleman, and it said that 89% of hospice nurses back then never ever were debriefed after one of their patients died, and 79% of it admitted that they had moderate to high levels of compassion fatigue at their jobs.
Yeah.
It's a tough, that is definitely, you got to be special to be a hospice nurse. You got to be a special soul.
Can I tell you what's funny? This is an interesting story. So I was afraid of death and dying for the longest time, until I've looked at it in the eye a few times.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to go to funerals when I was a kid. I was, and because I was afraid, I wouldn't stop crying.
Right.
So it was very interesting as how I kind of look at everything. And so my experience is actually having a couple of episodes of being near death, and knowing what that was like, and then studying holistic alternative, complementary therapies, more in the energetic, spiritual, vibrational medicine realm, bringing in those energy therapies, and then actually working with patients that were dying. It was very rewarding. That wasn't the trauma I experienced was with the family. It was really interesting.
And it made it hard for me too, because those people were like diligent. They were like, they went to every infusion appointment with those people, that my patients, and they were always there, and you could just see, and as they got sicker and sicker, you could see them wearing out and breaking down, and it was tough, man. I'm glad I could be there for those people, but it
I
took
know.
a toll on me too, girl. Yes.
Yeah, it totally takes a toll. And I agree with you too. The first time, I had to crack a chest open in the intensive care unit to do internal defibrillation on a little friggin' pulsating heart. I mean, what do you do? You go home, you have dinner, you go to bed, get up the next day and come back to the intensive care unit.
Yeah.
No one talks about it, and then so you do is you shelf it, so that traumatic experience I put in the way in the back until I became a patient, until I was on the other side of the bed, right? And then all of these traumatic experiences for me dealing with other patients came flooding back. It was interesting,
Yeah,
truly interesting.
definitely. I'm glad that you're doing so much better. Like we said, you work on yourself every day, you know.
Healing is an ongoing process. It's not about the absence of illness or disease, but it's doing the best you can with what you have right here, right now, with the tools that are available. And there's so many different tools.
Yeah, that's why I talk a lot about resiliency, because through resiliency, you can keep moving forward. It's an important thing.
Yeah, it's a truly important thing. So, Matt, how would you work with? So, let's talk a little bit about your course. So,
Okay.
you would, and what that entails and what you cover. So,
Basically,
people can sign up.
this course is it's a 1 hour course. Once again, I'm getting ready to, as I want it to obviously be real professional, but I'm putting a really cool course together that will be online. And people will be able to go on if they're involved in the police, peace officers of Missouri, as well as nurses, will be able to get 1 hour of continuing education with surveys sent to them and everything. And so the course really is about, I kind of really distinguish, I give definitions of compassion, satisfaction, compassion fatigue. There's a lot of nurses that think that compassion fatigue is just a cool word for burnout. And that's not,
That's what I thought.
yeah, that's really, and compassion fatigue is not only just being burned out, but it's suffering from secondary trauma syndrome, because the two of them are co-travelers. They travel together. And that's what differentiates just being burnt out, because people get burnt out at their jobs because no matter, like we said earlier, no matter what you're doing, the perceived demands are always going to outweigh the perceived resources. And, burnout leaves you feeling like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to get this job done the way they want me to do it. And they keep asking for more. But when you throw in, and my patients are dying of cancer right in front of me, or my patients are dying of the COVID right in front of me, and I'm a med-surg nurse and I'm in here working, so it gets worse when you're talking about secondary trauma syndrome, because a lot of people that are in other jobs where they get burnt out don't experience that. And that's why secondary trauma syndrome can really lead to that dis-ease part, the physicality of you really getting sick, like what you and I experienced, my friend.
Yeah, truly, truly, truly. Didn't really know what it was until now,
No,
that it was.
no. And then after I kind of go over some vocabulary, I really just kind of talk about symptoms, symptoms of compassion fatigue, and then I talk about the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, which we have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic, and how when we get really involved with compassion fatigue and we're really we're really struggling, by the time we're really not doing well and we're burnt out at work, we're really at a point where we're just reacting at everything. We're not really thinking. We're just so overwhelmed by everything that's going on. So
Everything's a trigger. Everything.
basically everything, yeah, everything's a trigger. So and then I just basically talk about the ProQual, and I introduce people to that. It's a free test. It's been around for 30 years. It's basically came from the data of 3,000 people. It's used all over the world. It's translated into 24 different languages. So it's one of the most widely used measures to track compassion fatigue and satisfaction, in people that work in helper roles. So it's
Yeah.
great, and it really opened my eyes to what was going on, and made me really want to start diving into what was compassion fatigue. How can I help myself? What can I do?
Yeah. Truly, truly. And it's about looking at all areas of your life, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and then
Um,
at the end of the program, I just really talk about, it's not like you can go to Walgreens and get your compassion fatigue pill. You gotta there's like I spoke of earlier, there's some techniques I talk about with people, working on mission statements, really connecting with some people, and once again, starting to take care of yourself. Doing a little exercise, getting some sleep, eating right. I mean, by the time you're overwhelmed and suffering from compassion fatigue, you're not really taking care of yourself. You're probably sick. I was so sick. I was extremely sick. Um,
Me
a
too.
lot of stuff going on physically with me that I couldn't, and emotionally, I was so the triggers were just overwhelming me at work. I felt like when my new manager was talking to me, like I would be standing there and I would feel like I was over there in another place in the room looking down
Mm.
at her talking to me, and then she would like say stuff, and I didn't even. It was like it was bad. It was pretty bad, and
You're like completely dissociated and
yes,
like was like,
it
wow.
was really bad. And once again, here I was, this guy that had just became a life coach, and I'm real positive, and I always try to be that really positive person, and always try to find the right, but I knew something was not right with me, and I didn't know what it was, and I was really not in a good spot in my life. So I'm glad to be and blessed to be where I am right now. That's for sure.
Oh, and I am blessed that you are where you are right now because you're going to be helping a ton of people. Going to be so excited to get your compassion fatigue program on the Green Nurse website. As
Yeah,
soon as it's up on your website, it will be up on our website so people can take it. You're
cool.
really, really exciting.
Uh,
Matt, this has been really, really amazing. I'm gonna play the next show tonight for you
sure.
all to watch. It's a really good one. It's Matt and I just having a dialogue of our experiences and what compassion fatigue looked like for both of us, and the different things that we experienced as nurses that led to that.
Yeah. Once again, I just want to say thanks again for letting me have the opportunity to share this with you and kind of talk about, being a cannabis nurse. It's really cool stuff. I'm hoping, once again, like you said earlier when you were introducing me, as I'm working with another cannabis nurse that's a member of the American Cannabis Nurses Association and the Cannabis Nurses Network here in Missouri. And she's got a company called the Cannabis Care Team. And we're out there in
Nice,
Oklahoma, and we're doing
nice.
stuff in Missouri with some of the new dispensaries. And boy, the people are just so excited because they're learning. It's one thing when they go to bud tenders kind of training, but when they're learning about cannabis from a nurse's perspective,
Oh yeah,
it is really. We really see some just epiphany moments with people. It's really cool stuff. I'm really happy to be able to doing it because I have a lot. I truly believe that cannabis is just such an individualized thing, and if we could really work with a person, we can help them get off of, or just find,
decrease.
yeah, find themselves again. I don't want to say get off all their medications and stuff because sometimes that's not going to happen. But if you can lower
Right.
the doses so there's not those major side effects, that's a positive too. So
Yeah. Truly, truly, truly is like really fun to teach people a new way of managing their health by giving them tools and letting them, teaching them how to fish, because you get it, Matt. When patients come to us, what do they want? They want us to make them feel better. They want us to tell them what to do and tell them what to take. And so we know as clinicians that that's not the way it works, right? We're going to
yeah,
take you on a journey,
yeah. And I actually, I don't know about you, but I have this journal that the Cannabis Care Team has, and it's like chock full of information about terpenes and different things. But one of the things that I love about it is this little care plan that's in there that just basically people can track what's going
Oh
on.
my God, it's awesome.
And we,
All right.
yeah, we've been selling these things to different dispensaries and stuff, but
Let's put the website. Is it www.cannabiscareteam.com?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
And
let's put it up.
these are actually for sale on Amazon.
Oh,
And
cool.
Bigfoot does love weed. I just wanted to let people know that that sticker's on there because
Oh my God, that's great. So Bigfoot loves weed. Okay, we're gonna have to gonna have to put that link up.
really can't confirm or deny that statement, but no, I really think that journaling is a big part of people being successful with their cannabinoid therapy because there's so many different strains out there and so many different methods of administration but once we find one that works for them and they become consistent, just like me, and just like you.
Yes. Well, Matt, my funny story with journaling is this. This is why I encourage journaling. So one time I went shopping at a dispensary and bought some products and didn't really like them, so gave them away. 6 months later, I find myself taking the exact same product. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't like this. If I had written it down, I wouldn't have bought it again, right?
Right.
It would have been in the do not buy list.
Well, exactly. And I mean, as we know, cannabis it's not cheap. Our insurance companies don't give us discounts on cannabis or CBD, THC products, whatever. I mean, so yeah, by journaling, and you want to know what works. You want to know what strains are going to work the best for you. I just completed a little book on called Qualifying Conditions, and they're all basically the same. But it's the one thing you said earlier, we're not treating qualifying conditions, we're treating the symptoms. And everybody's symptoms are a little bit different and everybody's going to react a little differently. And that's why individualized counseling, I believe it's not something that a lot of people want to do or pay for, but when you have the opportunity to do it, it's so much worth it because it can save you a lot of time and aggravation, and it can save people that don't want to happen.
Yes, truly, Matt, this is like my experience. Same.
I don't want anybody that's never used cannabis to try cannabis and have a bad experience that scares them so bad that they never want to try it again. I don't want that to happen.
Me neither. Because this plant is truly miraculous in how it works in our bodies. And there is a way that everyone can use it safely and effectively.
Exactly. And they'll never come back if they get scared like that because they were probably scared before they tried it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that's why.
And the importance too, Matt, of ongoing consultation and working with nurses such as ourselves is that as you grow and change and heal, your cannabinoid requirements change over time. Methods of administration may change, the different types of products you take may change. And the goal is to make sure that you have the appropriate information so you can make those changes and implement them yourself. So truly, working with a clinician ongoing and having that relationship. I still talk to some of my patients I started with 3 years ago.
Yeah. And that's why journaling is so important, because when you go there and you meet with us, you can show us what you've been doing and we can help, say, well, let's do this instead of that. I mean, and if you don't, you'll be just like your store. You'll be 6 months later, you'll be buying the same thing and then realize, hey, wait a minute. So
and that's how I created the program based on, I call it trial and success.
Right.
So I've made all the errors. This is what I say. It's not trial and error. I did it. This is trial and success. So you follow these little guidelines and these tips and tricks, right? You're going to be successful. And that's what we want to do as cannabis nurses. We want to set you up for success.
Exactly.
All right, Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Okay. And you know how we always end. Matt, what's it all about? Living your best life.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone.